Well, welcome everyone to my presentation today on navigating the archetypal energies for 2025. I'm really excited to have you all here today. Ever since I can remember, I've been captivated by the profound questions that probe the depths of human existence. This fascination has been really the driving force behind my journey into psychology, through spirituality, and through mental health. I've had this insatiable curiosity for the deeper truths, and it's led me to ponder questions that I'm sure some of you might have asked yourselves. What does it truly mean to be human? What shapes our individual personalities and behaviors? Why do we experience suffering? How are we all connected to the vast cosmos around us? So over the past 25 years or so, my exploration of these questions has led me to a powerful realization. The most comprehensive framework for understanding both human behavior and cosmic behavior, cosmic phenomena, is through the lens of archetypal energies. So my goal today is to provide you with a compelling snapshot of these archetypal energies and perhaps demonstrate how they can serve as a compass for navigating our lives. So let me introduce myself properly. I'm Mira Jain, an integrative mental health and authenticity specialist. My mission is to empower individuals to unlock their full potential by transforming anxieties into freedom and joy. Now, while I'm recognized for my work in being able to transform many mental health challenges, the heart of all of my work can be explained through a deep understanding of archetypes and archetypal energies. Most people are somewhat familiar with the concept of archetypes, but few have really delved into the realm of archetypal energies. And that, let me tell you, is the most fascinating world. So before we dive deeper into this fascinating world of archetypal energies, I thought I would start by giving you a brief overview of what archetypes are. So as we embark on this journey together, I invite you to open your minds, to open your hearts, to really soak in the transformative power of archetypes and archetypal energies. My hope is that by the end of my presentation, you'll have a new lens through which to view yourself, others, and the world around you. A lens that can guide you towards a more fulfilling and purposeful life, not just in 2025, but beyond. So what are archetypes? That word archetypes in our modern world has been associated with the famous Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. So to me, a good definition of archetypes would be innate, inherited, universal patterns that shape our behavior and personality. In fact, it shapes the behavior and personality of all members of a species. So these are part of the collective unconscious. And because of that, they influence all of our thoughts, all of our actions, all of our interactions. Carl Jung first became aware of archetypes in his own work on dream interpretation. He was surprised by the fact that people had the same dream images, and that was regardless of their culture, their race, where they had been born, what language they spoke, and so on and so forth. So what this suggested to him was that there was a universal language, a language of imagery. So in other words, archetypes is a way to explain how our psyche is organized. And the best way to understand what it means to be human and human behavior is through an in-depth study of archetypes. So I'll share some examples with you. Each one of us has the child archetype inside us. each one of us also has a parent archetype inside us. Each one of us also has the magician archetype inside us. Now, of course, some of these archetypes might be in conflict with one another because of past experiences, childhoods, and societal conditioning, childhood wounding, and so on and so forth. And that itself can generate fear, anger, sadness, maybe difficulty expressing ourselves with authenticity. It can also create conflict in our relationships. So although the concept of archetypes in modern society was something that was coined by Carl Jung, let me tell you, this is as old as human civilization itself. In fact, many ancient cultures and religions use the concept of archetypes to explain human behavior, cosmic behavior, and the world around us. Think of Buddhist psychology. It is full of archetypes, as is Hindu philosophy. We can even find the concept of archetypes in the myths and stories from across the world. We see examples of archetypes in Egyptian culture and in Greek myths. The tarot and astrology are also based on archetypes and the knowledge of archetypal energies. There's no better way to understand ourselves and our relationship to the world around us. So for those of you who have known me for many years, you know I can talk about archetypes for hours. And I'm passionate about the hero's journey through the lens of archetypes and chakras. That's one of my unique offerings that creates so many aha moments for people as they begin to connect all of those puzzle pieces of who they are, why they make the decisions they do, why they struggle with certain things, what makes them tick, their deeper desires and dreams, and so much more. And for those of you who have never attended that class with me, there's an opportunity that's coming very soon. So I want to now move on to talking about what are archetypal energies. So whilst archetypes are those universal patterns that shape our psyche, archetypal energies are so much subtler than that. Think of the very fundamental vibrational patterns that form the basic building blocks of the universe and everything within it. And that includes human consciousness. So these energies are the most subtle and foundational, so much more subtle and foundational than the psychological archetypes that Carl Jung talked about. So some examples of how archetypal energies might express themselves would be things like the form of light, space, dimensions, subtle energy, sound, pulse, rhythm, elements, patterns, and symbols. Archetypal energies are the primordial forces that structure our reality. So a good example is how everything in our physical reality is made up of the same four elements, right? Fire, water, earth, and air. And how everything in our psychological reality is made up of bipolar opposites. It's organized into bipolar opposites. You have yin and yang, right and wrong, good and bad, and the story continues. Archetypal energies is that common thread that connects us all and interlinks the nature of these energies. We also begin to understand how they influence us, how to harness them, and that can open doors of extraordinary possibilities. What am I talking about? I'm talking about everything from deep healing and personal growth to manifestation, and even what some might call miracles. All of this becomes possible and achievable. It is not possible for us to fully grasp the concept of archetypal energies, as these are the most basic, abstract, fundamental building blocks of the universe. But they are founded on the spiritual laws of the cosmos. So they're always seeking growth, always seeking balance, always seeking harmony. Archetypal energies are repetitive patterns and maybe best observed as imaginative symbols, which we are only able to see, observe, or interact with when they actually manifest into something physical, something within our manifested world. Archetypal energies create that very fabric of our universe and everything within it. This fabric can also be thought of as the Akashic field or the quantum field. At least that's what some people call it. That's the storehouse of all information and knowledge of everything within the universe and the universe itself. It's almost like a living energetic blueprint with instructions on how every tiny facet of the universe works. This living energetic blueprint is changing all the time due to the exchange of information that is happening constantly because of all the movement that takes place in the universe. So there's a saying, as above, so below. And if we look deeply enough, we find that not only the fabric of the universe is made up of this living energetic blueprint, but that around every living organism, there is a living energetic blueprint. In other words, archetypal energies contain our original creation patterns and are deeply imprinted in our energy fields. Okay, let me tell you, there's nothing crazy or woo-woo about what I am saying. As far back as the 1940s, there was a researcher called Harold Burr, and his experiments were all about showing evidence for the so-called energetic blueprint around living organisms. The question he asked was, why can a salamander lose a limb and yet regrow it? So Burr found that around every living organism, there was an energetic blueprint, which could be measured as electrical pulses around the living organism. Now, what was really interesting about what Burr was doing is that you could measure the electrical pulses around a salamander egg, and instead of those electrical pulses being in the shape of an egg, what he found was that these would appear in the shape of a full-grown salamander. Burr found the same thing with the seeds, that electrical pulses around seeds were in the shape of a full-grown tree or a full-grown plant. Through his experiments, Harold Burr concluded that all living organisms have an energetic blueprint around them. Now, within this living energetic blueprint is stored all the information about every tiny aspect of the existence of an organism. Think of the blueprint you might have designed before you begin to build a house. This blueprint will have very specific information about things like how deep do you dig into the earth, how much concrete do you need to pour, the exact dimensions of the different rooms, and so on. So in a similar way, all the information of the existence of a living organism is stored in the form of archetypal energies in the energetic blueprint of every living organism. This information affects what goes on in the physical cells, the emotional body, the mind. It also is affected by how the organism perceives life through its physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual existences. And perhaps the most important thing we must realize is that for any true healing to happen, for any permanent transformation to take place, we must be able to change the information that is stored in the energetic blueprint of that living organism. That is when the change will ripple through the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies of the individual, and they experience a huge shift. And then think, just like the blueprint of a home may be connected to something bigger, such as the blueprint of a neighborhood, a city, our own living energetic blueprint is connected to the energetic blueprint of the world around us, as well as the cosmos. So every tiny micro action we take, every thought we have, every decision we make, every intention affects not just our own personal energetic blueprint, but the energetic blueprint of the world around us and the greater cosmos. When our thoughts, our actions, our decisions, our intentions are conscious and benevolent, in other words, for the greater good, then the archetypal energies, those repetitive patterns of balance and harmony, are actually activated and strengthened, not just within our own energetic blueprint, but also in the world around us, also in the cosmos. And when our thoughts, our actions, our intentions, and our decisions are in line with greed, with power, and self-serving behaviors, the archetypal energies, again, those repetitive patterns, turn to be chaotic, fearful, anxiety-producing, because underneath all of these things, the root is greed, power, and self-serving behavior. The root of all of this is fear and lack. So those repetitive patterns of chaos, fear, and anxiety and lack get strengthened, not just within our own energetic blueprint, but the world around us and the greater cosmos. Remember, everything is connected to everything else in the universe. And the universe is constantly seeking to get back to that place of balance and harmony. And so our collective choices impact the cosmic field and can unleash cycles of chaos as a way to recreate the balance and harmony that the universe is always trying to get back to. So before we go on and start talking about the cosmic archetypal energies at play in 2025 and how best to navigate them, I just want to mention that for every problem and dysfunction in our lives, in our world, there is also a solution. So by grasping a deeper understanding of these archetypal energies, we also gain a perspective on how to work with them. This can be extremely useful in terms of healing, in terms of personal transformation and manifestation. And although I'm going to share with you a few of the ways in which I work with my clients to resolve struggles, I'll also just say that maybe there is nothing new here. I feel like I'm just rediscovering what our ancestors already knew. So most of the work that I do with my clients falls under the umbrella of energy-based psychotherapy. It's a very systematic process of navigating healing, transformation, personal growth, and manifestation by working with the universal language of the subconscious mind, again, which is often metaphorical images, just like in the dream state, and the energetic template or the energetic blueprint. So no matter what intervention I use, whether it's cognitive interventions, breath work, hypnotherapy, coaching, ceremony, and no matter how a client works with me, whether it is in one-on-one sessions, group breath work, weekend intensives, retreats, and so on. The goal is to engage the client's conscious awareness to access their energetic blueprint and change that blueprint so that the dysfunctional patterns can be reprogrammed to something healthier, something more aligned with the balance and harmony the universe is always attempting to seek, right? I found that it is essential to engage a person's conscious awareness for healing to happen. I've also found that the best way to engage a person's conscious awareness is through the hypnotic state or the trance state. And as far as the energetic blueprint is concerned, it's a part of our energetic body. And we can access it through the chakra system and through the energy field. So really, there's nothing new here, right? Many ancient traditions across the world knew this, and they would use, sound and music and ritual and ceremony and symbols, all repetitive patterns. And the purpose of these was to bring us out of the thinking mind, to connect us more deeply with ourselves, more deeply with the spirit world, and more deeply with the cosmos. So we could receive information, we could glean a deeper perspective, or we could experience healing and transformation. So let me share some examples. In Mesoamerican traditions, ceremonies and shamanic journeys are a way to tune into the archetypal energies of the individual, the tribe, or the cosmos, and facilitate healing. In Ayurveda, it's all about balancing the 4 elements within the body to achieve health and wellness. In Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism, the use of mantras and yantras are again a way to access the archetypal energies and effect change in the energetic template. In some of the older scriptures in India, there is wisdom, not just about the medicinal properties of herbs and plants, but the alchemical properties of certain herbs and plants. For example, one of the Indian gurus that I studied with, I learned that particular sacred materials can be used to clear the prosperity chakras in the energy body. And then if anybody's interested in learning more about my work, there are going to be a number of online and in-person opportunities coming up. I'll be sharing some online classes soon. I'll also be starting a healing circle where I'll be sharing more of my knowledge on healing and transformation. And Dr. Nelson Valina and I are currently in the process of launching a program in partnership with Physician Transformation Institute to transform physician burnout. Okay, that's enough about my work. Let's talk about the cosmic archetypal energies at play through 2025 and what we can do to navigate our own lives to be happier and more peaceful. So the cosmic archetypal energies at play can be determined through the movements of the planets, through the zodiac and their various conjunctions and oppositions and so on and so forth. Each planet is a representation of a different archetype. That's why the planets were always seen as the gods in Greek mythology, and their movements defined what we experienced on Earth. If there are 3 words I could use to define the energies of 2025, they would be chaos, confusion, and disillusionment. There is so much going on in the heavens, and some of those planetary alignments have not taken place in literally thousands of years. In addition, the 3 outer planets, which is Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, either recently changed signs or they will soon be changing signs. Now, that's a big deal. To have that happen in the space of 6 months, where all three of those planets transit into a new sign, it's a very rare occurrence. I'll tell you why. Because Pluto typically stays in one sign for approximately 19 years. Neptune changes signs about every 14 years or so. And Uranus stays in one sign for 7 years. Why am I talking about the three outer planets? Because the three outer planets are really to do with our collective consciousness on this planet. So what happens in the first 6 months of 2025 will define what the rest of 2025 is going to look like, and maybe even the years that follow. As we only have a very limited amount of time together today on this topic, I want to focus on some very specific things. One, I will be focusing on the transits of two of the three outer planets, which is Neptune and Pluto, because as I said earlier, they are connected with our collective consciousness. I'm also going to talk about the north and south nodes of the moon. In the in Indian tradition, we call them Rahu and Ketu. And the reason I talk about these is because they are connected with karma, both personal karma as well as our collective karma. And then finally, I'm going to talk about the solar eclipse that's happening on March 29th. That's in about 2 weeks. So the purpose of understanding all of this is to glimpse a higher picture. It helps us to detach from the actual events that are occurring, which can be so difficult to navigate if we become attached to them. However, if we get a sense of why things are happening the way they are, it allows us to act from a completely different place. We can stay calm and centered. So firstly, let's talk about Pluto's recent transit into Aquarius from Capricorn and what that represents. Okay. The best way to understand the archetype of Pluto is that it represents transformation and power. This is the lord of the underworld, and it's associated with rebirth, which naturally means that there is a breakdown of the old structures and a rebuilding of new structures. So during the time that Pluto spends in a sign, it feeds the shadow aspects of that sign, which become exposed as Pluto begins to transit into the next sign. 16 years ago, and we go back to around 2007, 2008, Pluto moved into Capricorn. And we saw the collapse of the financial markets and then a rise in some new structures. And because Capricorn is such an earth sign and supports physical structures, we saw Pluto feed its shadow, and it gave rise to those obsessed with desire for power and control. So that's what the last 16 years have been about. That is why some people became extremely wealthy. And since the transit of Pluto into Aquarius, which happened back in November last year, now Aquarius is the sign of the collective. All the obsessive power and greed is being exposed. Pluto, it will stay in Aquarius for the next 19 years. And so we are about to go through a dramatic transformation where the power dynamic is about to shift from individuals to the collective. So what does it mean for us? It means that the archetypal energies of the universe will no longer support obsessive individual greed and power as it has done since 2008. all the cosmic archetypal energies move to align with structures, systems, and choices that somehow support the collective. So through this transition, we're in a very messy time, because in this transitional phase, we go through where all of the shadows of power and greed are being exposed. But when you understand why it's to create something better, then you don't have to get caught up in all the chaos, in all the messiness. So in addition to this messiness, we have Rahu and Ketu transiting into Leo and Aquarius in May. So that's about 2 months away. These are the north and south nodes of the moon, and they're always opposite. So they always sit on the opposite sides of the zodiac. So while Rahu feeds and manifests our dreams and desires, Ketu does the opposite. It forces us to detach from them so we can grow as spiritual beings towards enlightenment. So there is always this push-pull, okay? So when Rahu moves into the sign of Aquarius in May, it's going to expand support towards the collective, because Rahu expands, lends energy. At the same time, you have Ketu moving into the sign of Leo. Leo is traditionally known as the ruler, the king. The symbol is that of the lion, the one who rules. And so there is going to be a push towards detaching from the ego, from greed, within individuals and on the collective level. So all of those in self-serving, egoic, and narcissistic traits are going to be forced to be exposed, and we are going to have to detach from them. This is going to create an inner conflict between our ego-driven desires and then a yearning to detach from materialism, to amplify the spiritual path, because the two can never go hand in hand. If we demonstrate egoic desires, we are likely to come up against disappointments. The word we need to embrace for 2025 is surrender. So what is also so interesting is that Rahu and Ketu take about 18 years to go through the entire zodiac. They typically spend about 18 months in each sign. The last time that Rahu and Ketu were in the signs of Leo and Aquarius, exactly how they will be transiting into in May, was 2007, when we had the financial crisis. So it's quite possible that we may see a crash in the financial markets in the second half of 2025 and sometime in 2026. Now, finally, at the end of March, Neptune will transit into Aries. It actually happens on March 30th. And that is going to create its own wave of changes. Neptune is the archetype of the boundless. So on a positive note, Neptune represents our imagination, our dreams, a breakdown in limitation, an exploration of the unseen, and spiritual transcendence. On a negative note, Neptune represents delusion, escapism, dissociation, and confusion. So what is so interesting to me is that Neptune moved into Pisces, and it gave rise to social media apps. So we go back to around 2012, right? So in the late 2000s and around 2012, what happened was Neptune moved into Pisces, and all of a sudden there was this flood of social media apps that became very popular, like Facebook and Twitter. And while these apps meant, on a positive note, that we were ever more connected with the rest of the world, remember, Neptune means a breakdown of limits. It also created a lot of delusion and escapism and dissociation. So Neptune in Pisces also gave rise to many alternative and complementary healing modalities. But again, this was also sometimes mixed up with a lot of nonsense and a genuine lack of understanding. Now, as Neptune begins to move into Aries, we are going to see a breakdown in the use of social media. Actually, I won't be surprised if our current social media apps have fallen away in a few years. If we look at the patterns of the last time Neptune moved into Pisces, and then from Pisces into Aries, it was actually back in the 1860s. It has about a 165-year cycle through the zodiac. So in Pisces, there was a period of breaking away from the church. There was experimenting with spiritual tools of the time, almost for the experience of it. So let me try a little of this and let me try a little of this, you know, and I'll go play with this a little bit. So there was a lot of that while Neptune was in Pisces. And so you saw people going to see mediums, sitting in seances and stuff like that. And then when Neptune began to move into Aries, it actually gave rise to something very concrete, some concrete systems. And that is when we saw things like Blavatsky's Theosophical Society arise. Blavatsky wrote books, and it was a way of organizing the knowledge in a way that it could be understood and shared. So here we are again with Neptune moving into Aries. It's actually a really exciting time where we are going to see a wave of new technologies, new systems of healing, and very systematic approaches arise. And so it's not just throwing arrows in the dark and hoping it sticks a target. There's going to be very systematic process that arise. And that's really exciting as far as health and wellness are concerned, just overall health and wellness. And then finally, let's talk about the solar eclipse that is happening on March 29th. And that's happening in Pisces. Now, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. And what is so interesting is that on this one day, other than the solar eclipse, we actually have 6, maybe 7 planets that have come together in Pisces. And it's creating some really powerful aspects, but it's such a rare occurrence to have that many planets in one sign. I think that it gives rise to some extraordinary beings being born that day, but it also signifies the end of a chapter. It's like the final ending. And it's almost as if the world is going to fall apart to begin anew. So don't be surprised if there is some escalation in war, reshaping of countries, changing in borders. There might also be a breakdown in identities. So how do we navigate through 2025 if it is so chaotic? I think it's important to realize that when there is chaos around us, we can easily get sucked into that energy. By understanding what is going on and why, we can make some conscious choices that don't add to the chaos. We can look to dissolve our own ego-based identities. We can transform our own wounds of fear and lack so we're able to step up in a more conscious way to contribute to the whole in a positive way. So here are some recommendations from me. Stay grounded and centered with a spiritual practice. Become part of a community of like-minded individuals. Don't get caught up with disappointment and disillusionment that we might go through, or we see that's what's being reported, or that's how people around us are feeling. Be willing to let go of what no longer is working or what no longer serves the collective. Have the courage to face your shadow aspects, especially those that are not aligned with the greater good of all humanity and the collective. That means all those parts that are self-serving, egoic, selfish, desiring power and control. If we are going to make it as a civilization, these are the parts that must be transformed. And finally, step up by being creative and willing to rethink our identity, to reshape our world, to recreate ourselves and who we are. Some questions to ask might be, who do I want to be? What do I need to let go of? How can I be of service to the greater good of humanity? What steps do I need to take to get there? The time is now. And with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. Please feel free to write those down in the chat or raise your hand and we'll unmute you. You can also email me any feedback you might have about this class, or what you would like to see more of from me. Was this class helpful? Would you like to hear more about the cosmic archetypal energies? I'll also be sending out an email soon to invite you to my class on the hero's journey through the lens of archetypes and chakras. As I've said earlier, that is my favorite class to present. Okay, let's see who's got questions.